What if Social Security is not there when I retire? Do I really need $2 million to retire? Let's go ahead and run some numbers and you can check them out for yourself. And I don't even want to get into debate whether it's going to be there or not, but in my understanding, even in 1930 or 2033, you're still going to get 79% of what you were promised. I don't think the politicians are going to let Social Security go bankrupt. They're going to do something to save it, at least in some kind of matter, because there's 73 million of us on Social Security. Well, let's actually look and see what if it wasn't there? Do you really need this kind of money? Let's go ahead and run the numbers. Again, here's the $2 million that they say you need to have. I just saw the average um, income of retirees, or actually working Americans, is 69,700 or something. Let's just see, that'd be 5,800 a month. There you go, 69,600. Now that's if you take 100% of what you did when you were working, but most people figure you probably need 75 to 80% of what you need. But we're going to go ahead and leave it at this just to run the numbers, just to be fair here. That's a 3.48% withdrawal rate on $2 million. Folks, anytime you're below the 4% rule, you are going to be in great shape. We're also going to do a 60-40 asset allocation because you wouldn't leave it all on the S&P 500. What else we do? We do a 3% COLA. Let's go ahead and run these numbers. Again, what we do on this channel, folks, is use the numbers for the last 100 years. Just projecting ahead what you might have in the future using these kind of returns. So let's see what would happen if we have uh, similar returns for the next 100 or for the next 10, 20, and 30 years using data for the last 100 years. So I'm going to go ahead and update this and tell you right now with a 3.48% withdrawal rate, you're going to be in fine shape. Again, you really need $2 million. Look at this, folks. Even in return years like 1929 and 1930, in fact, let me click on that real quick. Even if you start out with these kind of returns, your $2 million will be knocked down really fast. But again, with a 60-40 split, these monies that come out of the cash reserve account, there's a bucket over here, not out of the stock market, so it can recover. And look at this, folks. 0% of the time you would run out of money. Here's the actual graph. This is after 20 years. That's if you didn't use any Social Security, if there wasn't any Social Security there for you, and you just needed this basically $70,000, you have plenty. Let's go down a little bit. Let's see what happens if you went down to a million, half of that. Do you really need $2 million? Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go update that because now we just doubled the percentage. Instead of 3.48, now we're up to close to 7% withdrawal percentage. In that case, you are going to have some issues some of the time. Looks like 38% of the time you would have a problem if we did. You can see the years going down through there. If we did $1 million. But here's something else you might want to take into account. What about if when the market's going down, the very next year you don't take your COLA? In other words, you get 3% the years you do have a positive year the very next year. But if the market's going down, you take a 0% cut. You don't give yourself a COLA. Let's see how that might affect these numbers right here. Again, we're trying to look at $1 million. Do you really need $2 million? We saw in that case, you never even come close to running out of money. This case still got a 21% problem here. We have a few times during the Depression, around the late 60s, and again around the year 2000. So maybe you need a little bit more than $1 million. Let's do 2 million or 1.2 million. Again, this is Social Security is totally gone. Go ahead and update this now. And what we're going to do is not only do you take a COLA or not take a COLA after down years, actually you take a native COLA by 3%. In other words, after positive years, you get a 3% COLA. After negative years, you take 3% less. Yeah, that would be a little bit hard to take, but let's go ahead and run the numbers and see how that works. Right now, we got 21% of the time running out of money. You got a 5.8% withdrawal rate on this 1.2 million. Look at that, folks. Just taking a negative COLA. Only 1% of the time do you actually have an issue. Let's look at the actual graph. looks like it's the year 2000. It's not even during the Depression years. Isn't that surprising? It's just that year 2000 began, because again, the year 2000 had these 3 down years. But folks, you don't need $2 million, even if Social Security isn't there. Now, I realize we haven't taken into account inflation. We do that on other videos. We show not only would this be growing, what you need, but the amount you're putting in would be growing. So we're just assuming to take the numbers. They say you need $2 million in order to retire if you don't have Social Security. Here you can see 1.2 million with a 60-40 asset allocation. That's a 5.8% withdrawal rate until these negative COLAs start kicking. And this is only a 4.47. It's getting a lot closer to the 4% rule, which we know from other videos. Other times you run the numbers. 4%. If you have 4%, you're going to be in just fine shape. But we ran 2 million and you had no problem whatsoever. So we just looked at 1.2 million. That's more realistic. That's if you don't get Social Security, folks. Social Security isn't going to go away. That'd be suicide for a politician to allow that to happen, because there's so many of us on Social Security, 73 million of us. And of course, I'm one of them. They're not going to let it go completely bankrupt or completely run out of money. They're going to come up with something, and I don't know. I don't want to get into the politics or any of that. I just know that it's not going to go bankrupt. But even if it is, you don't need $2 million. Here's the 1.2 million with simply a 60-40 split and doing negative COLAs. Let's do a little bit less for the negative COLA. Let's do down 2% after negative years. That would be a 4.9% withdrawal rate. We're using negative COLAs. Let's see if this 1% changes much. And it's recalculating for every single year. Yep, now we're up to 2%. Whoa, that's not too bad. Again, what years are we talking about? We're talking about around the year 2000, 2001, and we're getting really close in 1929. But folks, look at the vast majority of time. You're going to be in just fine shape with $1.2 million, not even close to the $2 million they say. I don't know what numbers they're using to come up with this, but I just saw that stat and I had to reply to it. I just love to run numbers just to see what are they coming up with, because I'm using actual numbers here. What would happen if we have returns like we've had in the last 100 years? Why would it be much different than what's happened in the last 100 years, given the worst case scenarios we've had as recently as the year 2000? But again, folks, that's what we do on this channel. We run numbers for people. We set up spreadsheets. We do all kinds of different variables. We look at sequence of returns risk and your asset allocation, whether your 4% withdrawal rate is the one you need to do or whatever, and especially Social Security. How can it impact your financial planning? In this video, we looked at what happens if it's totally gone. But folks, you can see from your numbers, you don't need $2 million. Folks, thanks for watching the channel. Please share this with others. Let people know about this channel, that there's a channel out there that run numbers and answer some of these questions and maybe run some numbers so you can actually see what's going on. Thanks so much for watching.